U.S. government on Nigeria. Legitimizing Nnamdi Kanu.
The principle of fair. Sections 35 and 36.
Absolutely. And there is nothing like retrogressive action in law when it comes to criminal action. Yeah. We are not a military regime.
What eventually happened in the Court of Justice of Motion, could it have been avoided if the matter was handled differently?
Well, I do not know why he debriefed those lawyers. I also do not know why he decided to defend himself. But what is those are now in the realm of history or in the realm of the past. What now bothers many Nigerians was what happened on November 20th, the day he was sentenced, and the day he was convicted and eventually sentenced. And the whole issue surrounding the trial, the whole issue surrounding the conviction and the sentencing, the attitude of the court itself, whether the court followed the law or whether the court followed personal opinion of the jurists, or whether the court, in some people's opinion, acted on a script to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu is taken off the streets, in a manner of speaking. Whether Nnamdi Kanu defended himself or not, what to many people is more critical and more important is the attitude of the judge and the justice of the matter. Don't forget that in criminal adjudication, one can only be convicted when there is preponderance of evidence, 1, 2, and when the prosecution is able to prove the case beyond all reasonable doubt. We are not saying all iota of doubt, but at least all reasonable doubt, and that justice must not only be done, but to be seen, manifestly be seen as having been done. The generality of the public of Nigeria and even the international community do not believe that the justice was done in Nnamdi Kanu's case. Don't forget that the issue of treason is a political decision by the state, because treason is an offense against the state. It has been brought to become an offense against humanity, and that is why there is an international convention against treason, and it was to be able to bring it to the level of to align Nigeria's act with that of the rest of the world, following the UN convention, that brought to the repeal of Nigeria's 2011-2012 terrorism prevention Act, and reenacted in 2022 with implementation in 2023 of Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. Now, the whole issue about Nnamdi Kanu's matter bears a lot of question and defeats a lot of logic, because a lot of people, even now, Nnamdi Kanu himself had continued to say it, even rambunctiously in court, that they should show him the law with which he's being tried. Because by the time many people didn't understand, because all the people who were not privy to the charges and people who were not privy to the goings on in court, we are at a loss as to why would a man be charged for an offense that is not known to law in a criminal trial. Because a Nigerian statute book says that one cannot be tried for a law of an offense not codified and known to law.
And then under the principle of fair, sections 35 and 36.
Absolutely. And there is nothing like retrogressive action in law when it comes to criminal action. Yeah. We are not a military regime. Now,
but Nnamdi Kanu was charged under the old law.
Under the old law.
Terrorism.
He was charged under the 2020.
No, not under 2022. Under the older law of 2011.
2013, yeah. Not 2022, 2013. That was repealed.
The old law.
The old law that was repealed in 2022.
Yeah, but so the new law will not take effect. That's why Chief Awomolo is saying, he's saying that the punishment is death penalty. He was quoting the old law, and that the accused person was charged under the old law.
The accused person was charged under the old law. Don't forget that charge under the old law got extinguished in October 2022. But
the law, you yourself just said it, cannot have retroactive effect.
We cannot have retroactive effect.
Those are issues they will resolve at the level of appeal.
No. There's one major issue that is even on the open. Okay. Because in the first instance, don't forget that Nnamdi Kanu had earlier been acquitted by the Federal High Court before federal government went to Court of Appeal. And every moment an accused is acquitted, discharged and acquitted, he goes home from the court. He can only go back to the prison or to wherever he was detained to collect his personal items. If he doesn't want, he can abandon them there. If he doesn't want, he can go from there to his house. If he doesn't want, because at the end of the day, the federal government refused to release him. So at that point of that discharge and acquittal in October of 2022, the court became functus officio. So you can no longer hold on that old law. But by the time you saw the judgment from the Constitutional Court, it was referring to the 2013 charge. So that became a very, very strong issue against that judgment and against the entire procedure. Okay. There are so many other issues which judiciary may not allow us to explain.
These are issues that can be worked out when the matter goes to the Court of Appeal. Aloy Ejimako has already said they will go on appeal. Yes, and that by Monday, tomorrow, they are going to file.
He has a whole 90 days. We think we to do so.
However,
so
you need to notice that Justice Omotosho even said, oh, he was tampering justice with mercy. He was not applying the full teeth of the law. However, what do you think is the way forward? And don't you think that the matter was even complicated by the conduct of the accused person who discharged his own counsel? I mentioned the very senior lawyers who know the territory. Now, in this same case, what's his name now? Uzekome, yes. SAN, yes, was involved. Kanu Agabi, SAN. Paul Erokoro, SAN. Ikpeazu, SAN. These are people who know the law, the in and out of it, who could have provided a different kind of pathway and who could have handled the matter. But where the accused person abusing the presiding judge, and you said, oh, the presiding judge is the problem. What do you expect his lordship to have done in a situation whereby the accused person took over the proceedings of the court and questioned his integrity, questioned his... So what the judge did eventually in the 144-page judgment that I have seen is that he just applied the law. Simply.
Dr. Abati, you may say so, the judge may claim so, but the judge committed what majority of the people describe as a travesty of justice, and I tell you why.
No, he's not
a mob opinion because there are the facts are there. The judge jumped into the arena. The judge even usurped the office of the executive.
How?
I'll tell you why. It does not lie in the purview of the court to decide where a convict will be kept.
So guys, straight to what the international society have just said about Nnamdi Kanu, and I read the news in details. IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu named major victim of Judeo-Christian self-defense in 2025 as evidence mounts against Nigerian state lawlessness. Let's be reading out the news in details. In what has emerged as a damning verdict on the state of law, justice and constitutionalism in Nigeria, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, has officially been designated major victim of Judeo-Christian self-defense in Nigeria in 2025. The designation made by the International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law, in brackets, Inter-Society, sits at the heart of a broader body of collected evidence indicting Nigerian authorities for entrenched lawlessness, selective justice, and the violent repression of citizens who dared to stand up for themselves. This declaration is symbolic as Nnamdi Kanu represents the aspiration of Nigerians and state injustice against citizens who dare to defend themselves against the ongoing Christian genocide. It is a forensic conclusion drawn from years of documented abuses, systematic constitutional breaches, and the deliberate elevation of brute force over the rule of law by successive Nigerian governments since June 2015. At the center of this unfolding narrative is Nnamdi Kanu, whose extraordinary rendition, prolonged detention, and continued persecution in defiance of multiple court orders have become the clearest illustration of Nigeria's descent into executive lawlessness. In Kanu's case, the Nigerian states did not merely bend the law, it pulverized it. You can imagine the international society are now saying that in Kanu's case, Nigerian society did not only bend the law, they pulverized it. You can imagine what Nigeria stands for in the international world. You can imagine what Nigeria stands for before the entire world. Nigeria, I'm sorry to say this, Nigerian judiciary is a disgrace to the world. At this very point in time, I'm sorry to say this, Nigeria's judiciary is symbolic. Because how can you try Nnamdi Kanu under a law that does not exist? And now the international society are saying, look, Nigeria did not merely bend the law. Nigeria pulverized it. Nigeria pulverized the law. They turned over the law. You can imagine what the international society are saying about this. And they have frowned at the detention of Nnamdi Kanu because Nnamdi Kanu in truth is innocent. They have looked at all documented evidences and they have drawn to conclusion that Kanu is innocent. That the Nigerian judiciary did not only bend the law, they pulverized the law. They turned over the law. They took matters into their own hands. They ignored the court in Nigeria. Because in 2022, the appeal court stated that Nnamdi Kanu is innocent. The appeal court acquitted Nnamdi Kanu. But Omotosho in 2025 came out to court, took matters into his own hands, ignored previous judgments, convicted Nnamdi Kanu illegally, and sentenced him unlawfully to life imprisonment. And the international society have frowned on this. They have said, look, we won't accept this. We won't stand by injustice, and we won't let this to happen. Well, let's wrap up what the international society said. Kanu's designation as a major victim is therefore an indictment of a state that punishes resistance to extermination while tacitly enabling its architects. You can imagine what the international society have said. They have frowned at the illegal detention of Nnamdi Kanu, and they have said, look, the Nigerian state is shambolic. They have said, look, this is a disgrace upon Nigerian state, that Nnamdi Kanu has to be released. Well, at this point in time, I'll urge you to share this message across the world. I'll urge you to enlighten others about this very video as you are watching it, because other people have to see this video. Other people have to know what actually happened on the 20th of November, and the world needs to see this message and look and see what the international society have just said about Nnamdi Kanu, because Nnamdi Kanu's release might just be incoming.
Yes, Nigerians should not forget in a hurry, and Africa should not forget in a hurry. Biafra all over the world, congratulations. Nobody should forget in a hurry that finally, Nnamdi Kanu wrote to Donald Trump concerning his trials in Nigeria, which was acknowledged right there in the office, according to what we hear from some of the powerful senators. Ted Cruz also acknowledged to that. But the good news today is that Donald Trump has finally taken over Nnamdi Kanu's case. Immediately he left Mar-a-Lago to New York on his way to Oval Office, Washington. That is the breaking news today, that he has taken over, he has ordered for the file, and he has finally taken over Nnamdi Kanu's case. He want to see have a direct analysis and a direct access to whatever that is happening to Nnamdi Kanu currently. And you can see on several occasions top lobbyists within the American government, both his ex-lobbyists has made very clearly that this issue of Nnamdi Kanu, after an exposure, after giving Nigeria expo, that Bola TINUBU should use executive order to release Nnamdi Kanu before the U.S. government intervention. Unfortunately, the Nigerian government has ignored this. This is the same man that predicted 2 weeks ago about the Somaliland independence coming. It happened, and he has also told Nigerian government that they should prepare for possible breakup of Nigeria. That is 2. 3. He also sent a signal to the Aso Rock to advising Bola TINUBU to use executive order and release Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally, immediately, before the United States government now comes in and take over. And that is the breaking news, that now that Trump has stepped into Nnamdi Kanu's case, and of course, the Bola TINUBU, who refused to comply, should forget about anything that has to do with 2027 election. That is a very big, slap. And we are hearing that, there's an emergency meeting in that regard, because the government has a diplomatic channel of getting response, a way of getting, their own first-hand information on development surrounding their government, within and outside Nigeria. And ever since that news, break out that Trump has signaled intention to take over Nnamdi Kanu's case, bam! There's fire in the mountain. emergency meeting here and there. And remember, there is an inter-organizational NGO, inter-society, who also, made a series of allegations about human rights abuse, and of course, lawlessness within Nigeria. You understand? Pointing, using Nnamdi Kanu as a reference point. There's a lot of illegality going on in Nigeria. But this kind of high-profile, attack on Nnamdi Kanu's human rights, not based, judgment not based on law, not based on rule of law. It was just a political judgment on Nnamdi Kanu, just to please the Fulanis. Yes, it has spilled over to something that has brought another, emergency on Aso Rock. The people are running up and down, and this inter-society has made it very clear that has been behind, calling on Nigerian government to do the needful against human rights abuses, has been credited, has been acknowledged by international organizations. No signal that this man, this is the same thing that Nicolas Maduro is facing after a series of advice. Maybe they thought that Trump will not be able to do anything, but now Nigerian government will have to invite Omotosho, we have to invite those who are part of that unfortunate judgment to come and explain. I think he has ordered for a committee to be set up to revisit Nnamdi Kanu's judgment. But unfortunately, I think that it is too late. You can't be starting it now that the US government has stepped in and said, they are now want to be in charge of Nnamdi Kanu's case. They want to see how they manage to pass that judgment. And immediately that judgment was passed, remember that a top senator in United States of America, James John, if I can remember, condemned it during the public hearing. Nigeria should not forget, during the public hearing, on that the same day that judgment was passed. So Nnamdi Kanu is not just somebody who just come and trample upon. He has become a global figure and a global personality. And these things are the things the world leaders, the world powers are looking at. That in just no distant time, Biafra is actually around the corner. Whether there is Nnamdi Kanu, whether Peter becomes in a president or not, the United States and the international community are no longer interested about the process anymore. Why? Stop terrorism, release Nnamdi Kanu, or you resign and let American government take their decision. And one of the options, I keep on saying it, this is what we have been saying before now. One of the options is that, Nnamdi Kanu must be released unconditionally, and failure to do that, because they don't see Nnamdi Kanu not only as an IPOB leader, they don't see Nnamdi Kanu as a terrorist. They see Nnamdi Kanu's trial and judgment and imprisonment is a symbol of Christian genocide or Christian attack on Nigerians, and the world is against it. United States government is against it, and not only that, the Prime Minister of Israel is also against it completely. I'm saying it very clearly that his Jewish friends, the Jews, he made it repeatedly, that they are coming. They are already here. The Israeli government is already here. Mossad came into Nigeria last year, June. There's no two ways about it. If you look at what Gumi said a few months ago, he said that who brought Mossad into Nigeria? They're already here. And what happening underground? You may not be able to know it. You wake up one day in Nigeria and you find yourself in Biafra land. It's as simple as that. Now, we have crossed the Rubicon. According to Nnamdi Kanu, we have crossed the Rubicon, and I thank God, that the Biafran solidarity is making waves all over the world. Because you cannot tell me that nobody can say that Christians in Nigeria are not facing political attack, political persecution, and possible extermination. Just like what we are seeing in the Middle East between Israel, Hamas, and of course Iran. They are facing it on daily basis. So it's a very clear picture that if they don't do the needful, what is 2027 election? That is not the American business. What American is saying is that lives are being lost, humanity is being killed in Nigeria, and the only option on ground is for the government to do the needful. And you can see, ever since the congressman came into Nigeria and left, It's more than 10 attacks on churches and killings and kidnappings, shooting of Nigerians all over the country, has been happening. And Nigerian government seems to be confused. They don't know, overwhelmed. They don't know where to actually start from. What they are concentrating now is about politics. But of course, I can tell you, those who are already in the list, of possible by US government, they know themselves, and it can move to another direction anytime, any day. And that is the picture that is out there now currently.
That picture that is out there. Okay, but I've seen a video of a popular prophet saying that what Omotosho himself might be the one that might later go to jail because the law that was used to jail Nnamdi Kanu is what is not in existence. And for what we can see, I think that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump is so furious and angry. Said what law was used to jail Nnamdi Kanu. And for what we can hear now, ICC now and other law organization are asking Omotosho now. Omotosho might come to, he might need to explain himself that what law was used, because this law was scrapped in 2022. Do you think that the US government can finally arrest Omotosho?
You see, that terrorism act that was prohibited, that was no longer existing, was actually adopted without a due process. I don't know how Omotosho saw what he used at the end. And I can say, because of what Trump is trying to do now, the federal government is trying to set up a committee to look into the matter, and not only that, the fact that the world leaders are ordering for Nnamdi Kanu's case file, signal that Omotosho likely to go to jail at the end of the day, because if you look at it very well, Omotosho did not pronounce judgment on Nnamdi Kanu based on the law. He pronounced judgment based on how much he was greased with in his pocket. There is no law anywhere that he stand on. There's no constitutional backing to that judgment. And he has indicted himself, and there's a threat to his license to be confiscated. They are not joking. Nnamdi Kanu is not an ordinary person. You can see how many organizations, agencies now are rising up to question the rationale, and that puts pressure on the side of the federal government now. That says set up a committee, but I think all these things now, unfortunately, has become too late. Israeli government said his own people, friends who are Jews, his own people, friends who are Jews, are under persecution in Nigeria. He's talking about Nnamdi Kanu and the Igbo people and the Biafrans also. The US government said, okay, we are taking over this matter now. Bring the letter, bring the report of that judgment. Let us see it. And US lawmakers and of course reputable organizations and law firms in US under Finn Bruce, who is Nnamdi Kanu US lawyer, has also been working on the ground. And you can see that now that the case file has been brought to US government now, there's no two ways about it. That is the end of James Omotosho, that is likely going to face ICC or go to jail straight, because the whole thing will be exposed. And any further push by US government now on Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think nobody's will be questioned over the fate of James Omotosho, because he will be asked to prove which law or which he stood and passed that kind of judgment to Nnamdi Kanu, whom the international community did not see as a terrorist organization, whom the Nigerian government is also accusing they are the one working with Donald Trump to bring Biafra. Then how will Donald Trump work with terrorists? There's a question. So you can see, there's no moral ground by the Nigerian government to justify whatever treatment, because Nnamdi Kanu is the symbol of 85 million Igbos around the world, Biafrans around the world. There's no two ways about it. So it is a very big indictment, and that one alone, can be seen. See, there are a lot of things that the US government can hold on against Nigeria to carry out any mission they feel that is deemed fit to bring sanity to the most populous black nation in Africa. And there are so many. Nnamdi Kanu is one of them. And you can see that, yes, even though that report might not be true, that the Sultan of Sokoto has left it, everybody's on the run. Everybody's gradually on the run. So, but to be on the safer side, there will be a military intervention to pull out Nnamdi Kanu from, to just like what we saw in Venezuela will happen in Sokoto. Nnamdi Kanu will be rescued by US Israeli forces before 24 hours after that, Biafra will be declared. That's the option. But that's the plan. It's a leaked memo, and I can tell you. I mean, after that rescue, because that's the only obstacle. Biafra will not be declared while Nnamdi Kanu is still in Sokoto. And remember, a section of the Islamic Muslims in Nigeria are saying that they are going to carry arms against Nigeria if Donald Trump finally deploy troops. You see the case, deploy troops. They will now. So I know that their target, the first target, is to see how they are going to manipulate themselves to Sokoto, and maybe see how they are going to, God forbid, because the angels will smash them on their way to Sokoto to attack Nnamdi Kanu. And I can tell you that. So the Americans have their plan. They're intelligent. They know they're in Nigeria already. The American intelligence is in Nigeria, and they're gathering information on a daily basis. And the option is on the ground, like I told you, President TINUBU, they have gotten the report on genocide. There's no two ways about it. There's nothing the government can do about it anymore. So the best thing for them at this point in time is now Bola Tinubu should quickly do that. At least to calm the anger of the US government on Nigeria. Release Nnamdi Kanu. Because by the time you release Nnamdi Kanu, it's been believed that you now have a reconciliation, you now have a soft spot on Christians in Nigeria. Because you are running a Muslim ticket government. There's no space. Nigeria is no longer a secular nation. So they have that plan. Rescue Nnamdi Kanu in less than 24 hours. If they not stop the killing of Christians anywhere, then you'll be hearing the flag of Biafra flying all over the world. And I can bet you it is backed up by EU, backed up by the three top world government currently now. I'm not talking about United Nations though. You have Israel, you have China, you have Russia, and you have America. I mean, Donald Trump is not in good terms with Kestama. He went to Venezuela. He never informed Kestama.
He said Trump is not straightforward. He said Trump have another plan.
Yes, he has another plan because he's against bad government. Why is Kestama silent about Nnamdi Kanu up to today? Why is the British government silent about Nnamdi Kanu up to this moment? That is why Donald Trump look at it. No, I don't need to inform this man on my mission to Venezuela. And that is how they are not going to inform UK on their mission in Nigeria to bring about Biafra declaration.